For the longest time, AI agents were basically just glorified scripts. You give them a task, they do it, and then they completely forget you even exist. But in February 2026, the team at NOS Research released something under an open-source MIT license that fundamentally shifted the paradigm. Today, we're diving into the evolution of automation to unpack Hermes Agent. This isn't just another chatbot wrapper. We are looking at an entirely new species of self-learning digital intern. The core philosophy here, building an agent that actually grows with you.
Just think about the sheer scale of this for a second. Hermes autonomously wrote a 79,000-word novel, keeping its context perfectly intact across multiple sessions. For years, we've had to deal with stateless agents that had goldfish memory. The second you close the terminal, all their knowledge vanishes. Writing a novel of that size requires flawless continuity across dozens, maybe hundreds of separate working cycles. Because Hermes actually pulls this off, we are finally moving past the era of constant AI amnesia and stepping into real cumulative intelligence.
So, where are we going with this explainer today? We're going to break down what Hermes Agent actually is, dive into its fascinating self-learning loop, and, because nothing is perfect, we'll candidly diagnose its flaws and vulnerabilities. After that, we'll throw it in the ring with its biggest rival, OpenClaw, check out the older alternatives on the market, and figure out who this technology is ultimately built for.
All right, let's start with the basics. What exactly is Hermes Agent? At its core, it's a Python-based architecture. But unlike older tools, the center of the system isn't about routing messages. The center of the system is the agent's execution loop itself, the continuous cycle of doing, learning, and improving.
And here's the coolest part about how it operates. The compute is totally uncoupled from your laptop screen. You can deploy it to run 24/7 in the background inside Docker containers, on a cheap $5 cloud VPS, or using serverless setups like Modal. While all the heavy lifting happens on a server, you just seamlessly chat with it through a unified gateway. We're talking Telegram, WhatsApp, Slack, Discord, or your local terminal. You just shoot a message to your digital intern, and it works tirelessly in the background. Let's transition over to the real technological breakthrough here. This is what makes Hermes act less like traditional software and much more like a human intern, the closed learning loop. Instead of just blindly executing commands, Hermes turns its experience into permanent instructions. Let's say it successfully solves a really complex multi-step problem for you. Once it's done, it evaluates its own work, extracts the successful pattern, and automatically creates a reusable skill written as a markdown file. What does that mean for you? It means the next time you give it a similar task, it doesn't start from scratch. It uses that newly written standard operating procedure to get the job done 2 to 3 times faster. This brings us to a massively important concept, procedural memory. Hermes isn't just memorizing random facts, it's remembering methods and algorithms. It layers this knowledge using lightning-fast FTS5 database searches across all your past sessions via SQLite. But it goes even further by using the Honcho dialectic modeling system. Basically, over time, the agent gets a deeper and deeper understanding of your personal habits, your logic, and your specific tech stack.
On top of all that, it is incredibly flexible. Out of the box, Hermes is model agnostic, supporting over 200 different language models. With just one terminal command, you can swap the system's brain from OpenAI to Anthropic, Qwen, DeepSeek, or even a completely local Llama deployment for total privacy. Plus, it's secure by default, coming packed with prompt injection scanning, a strict command approval system, and full environment isolation.
But hey, let's be real for a second. It is definitely not all sunshine and rainbows. To really understand this tech, we have to candidly evaluate its real-world limitations and diagnose where the architecture currently breaks down. The biggest flaw comes directly from its coolest feature, the self-evaluation process. Because the agent grades its own homework, it frequently acts like an overconfident intern. It will evaluate a totally botched output as a massive success. And the danger here is huge. If it hallucinates a success, it extracts that failure and permanently memorizes an entirely incorrect skill.
There are a few other major operational risks under the hood too. Because of its autonomy, Hermes can actually overwrite the skills that a developer spent hours carefully configuring by hand. Then there's the cost. Constantly pushing huge amounts of persistent background context and searching through history can instantly burn through your API budget if you don't set up strict limits in caching. Finally, because it's newer, it only has about 40 or so built-in plugins. That's a pretty limited ecosystem compared to the massive marketplaces of its competitors.
Speaking of competitors, let's look at the ultimate heavyweight showdown of 2026, Hermes agent versus OpenClaw. This isn't just a feature comparison, it's a battle between two completely different philosophical approaches to AI.
OpenClaw, which is built on Node.js and TypeScript, acts as a control plane and gateway. It was designed from the ground up to route commands and manage massive swarms of agents. Hermes, as we've seen, centers entirely on the execution environment. It is laser-focused on the automation and self-learning of a single personal agent. So, OpenClaw is a router you configure, while Hermes is a partner that learns.
When you put them side by side, the contrasts are really stark. In OpenClaw, skills are static. You download them from the Claw Hub Marketplace, which has an amazing 44,000 skills, but they don't evolve. Hermes generates and improves its own skills. For memory, OpenClaw remembers too much, which leads to massive context bloat and project confusion. Hermes uses a much more disciplined, layered approach. And for security, OpenClaw requires deep system access, which actually led to that nasty 2026 CVE vulnerability involving token theft. Hermes is much safer by default because it isolates its processes.
Now, what about the rest of the market? Let's take a quick look at the alternatives and see why some of the older frameworks are starting to look a bit like fossils.
AutoGPT was the absolute pioneer, but its context window memory is completely obsolete today, and it can't accumulate skills. Crew AI is a fantastic system if you want to build specialized teams, but for a solo dev, it's total overkill and its memory dies the second the session ends. LangChain and LangGraph are incredibly powerful frameworks, but you literally have to code the logic yourself. Hermes, meanwhile, is ready to go in 5 minutes. And tools like OpenDevin or Claude Code, they're brilliant, but they are strictly locked into coding tasks. Hermes really stands out as the highly persistent, universal solution here.
All right, it is time for the final verdict. Synthesizing everything we've looked at today, who is this agent actually for?
The recommendation is actually pretty straightforward. If your goal is to manage corporate multi-agent networks, set up team access, and route requests through over 50 out-of-the-box social media integrations, OpenCall is the undisputed king. However, if you are a developer or an individual professional looking for a personal digital intern, one that lives autonomously on a VPS 24/7, constantly develops its procedural memory, and tackles your repeating daily routine, Hermes Agent is absolutely the best choice you can make.
We have officially crossed the threshold from static scripts into the paradigm of procedural learning. But as we've seen, with true autonomy comes the very real risk of a system learning the wrong lessons. So, I'll leave you with this. Are you ready to entrust your daily routine to an agent that actually learns from its mistakes? Think about how that could completely reshape your workflow. Thanks for joining us for this explainer, and we'll see you in the next one.